Today we're going to be discussing how a race that I've been looking forward to for 6-7 months, my first official race, how that has now been cancelled, and it's either because of a genuine global pandemic or because of a global conspiracy. Dun dun dun! Is that too dramatic? That was maybe a bit dramatic. Okay, so with 2 days to go, it's now Thursday, the Mourne Skyline 20-mile mountain race has been cancelled due to the new coronavirus restrictions that have come in here in Northern Ireland. If you don't know the current situation, we're on an upward curve of what they're calling a second wave. We're getting about 1,000 infections a day. And I think today or yesterday there were 4 deaths. The deaths are starting to go up as well, so they decided these extra restrictions are going to come in from 4 weeks. So I am gutted, absolutely gutted. I've been training for months for this and now it's cancelled, but I'm going to do something. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. I don't know if I'm going to go down anyway. What I don't want to do is I don't want to go down and run around it with a big group, because obviously that's just not a wise thing to do at the minute. Yeah, so I can't decide. I'm going to do something. I have an alternative idea for something I could do. I'll see what happens, but yeah, that's how it is. Something I definitely need to say is a huge thanks to the team that were organising the Mourne Skyline Mountain Trail race. Those guys put in a huge amount of effort to try and make this happen. People were giving them abuse online. They're volunteers. It's not a profit-making race. I mean, catch yourself on if you're someone who was entitled enough to go on and give them abuse. It's just, that wound me up. No need for that whatsoever. Thanks to them for trying to make it happen. You did your best, but here we are. The one thing is that just because I'm really annoyed that it's been cancelled by the restrictions doesn't mean that I don't think that maybe the restrictions were necessary. I have noticed that, I'm increasingly getting messaged by people who don't think there should be any restrictions or don't think that there is even potentially a real virus, things like that. And that's what I want to talk about now. Let's talk about coronavirus, and let's just talk about, I'm going to keep this really simple. Because what I've noticed is there are 2 kind of narratives out there, 2 stories, 2 narratives of what is going on at the minute. And both of them kind of explain, or seem to explain, what is currently going on. And the one is quite simple. Well, it's not simple, but you'll find it is simpler. Is that, yes, there is a virus. There's a novel virus that hasn't really been seen before. It hasn't spread worldwide before. It hasn't been studied over a long period of time because it only appeared last February? I can't remember now. It's so long ago. It hasn't really been around long enough to know how it fully acts, both in how it spreads, how it affects people, how it even affects them long term. We're now hearing this term about long COVID, about people who have like lung damage and organ damage. Long term, that people don't die from it. People that even maybe aren't even incredibly sick, they're weakened for a long period afterwards. There's all these kinds of things that are coming out I don't understand, and maybe all this chaos that we're seeing is pretty much the result of governments, medical professionals doing their best to try and control a virus that they don't really understand, and sometimes when things are completely contradictory, sometimes that's because they've learned something new. I'm not ruling out there's definitely a lot of political meddling and things going on behind the scenes, especially definitely here in Northern Ireland. The level to which our restrictions and lockdowns and the things that get locked down, you can tell which ones have had political manipulation behind the scene. Because there are political lobbies that'll come in and say, you can't shut this down, and they'll compromise and they'll say, okay, we'll shut this instead. There's a political side to it as well, but in general, are we just seeing the responses of medical professionals and scientists reacting to something they don't understand, and then governments trying to implement that the best they can while dealing with the reaction of their own populations. So when you have great variations between countries, everybody talks about the Swedish model and things like that. I'm not going to go into that because it's another, there's so much there. But when you see those variations between countries, people say, oh, look at that country, that did this and did that. How often is that difference? How often does that difference actually come down to the methods used, or just the general levels of compliance or belief within the population? I don't think it's any great mystery why Northern Ireland has got, like, is it the highest or one of the highest current infection rates in the UK? We don't like being told what to do. It's quite simple. I did see somebody comment recently and say that if you ask somebody from, if someone told us to keep breathing, we would suffocate ourselves just to spite them. There's definitely an element of that. If we're told to do something, we will go out of our way to find a reason that gives us an excuse not to do it. So that's one narrative, which, to summarize, is there is a virus, we don't understand it, and this chaos we're seeing is basically governments, politicians, scientists, medical professionals doing their best to try and deal with it in an ever-changing situation, and that makes it look like stuff that's contradictory and stuff that's chaotic is happening. So, but it is real and it's not good. That's one narrative. And then the other one is, we'll call it, the conspiracy narrative. The other one is the conspiracy narrative, and that is basically that there is a global conspiracy requiring the compliance, silence, and deception of pretty much every single world government, the political parties within those governments, and bear in mind, this is cross-party, so, UK, that's, Labour government, Labour Conservative in the States, that's Republicans, Democrats. So opposing parties that hate each other, it requires their mutual silence for whatever the nefarious goal is. It also requires the silence of, what we call the mainstream media. And it requires the silence of every reporter, every journalist who works for them. All involved, even the skeptics, because there are skeptics in the mainstream media, but those skeptics aren't going as far as to call it conspiracy. They're like poking holes in certain things here and there. So even those people need to be in on it because they're part of that, they're part of that circle. And then it also requires the silence, lies, and deception of every medical professional in the world, basically, who's in a hospital where you can't escape the truth if this isn't real. If you're in a hospital and people aren't coming in with this and dying of this, if the whole thing's a cover-up, the people who know are the medical professionals. They know. So what that means is, if this is a conspiracy, all your friends who are medics, who work in medicine or work in any kind of health service, when they tell you it's real, they're all lying to you. They're making it up. It's completely untrue. And that means that my relatives who work, my relatives and my friends who work in health, that they've all been lying since the beginning. That my relatives who were saying they were scared to go to work because they were terrified of catching this, that they were just making that up. That it replies, so basically the conspiracy side requires the compliance of millions of people worldwide. Just a huge cover-up, massive, million, it's just insane. And that's not even taking into account what the reasons for that might be and whether or not the motivations behind those are plausible. Just one thought in general is that it's very, very easy to come up with a narrative, an alternative narrative, about something that requires expert knowledge to fully understand it. And that's something people don't seem to want to accept. For you to be able to make a decision to not believe what you're being told by official health experts means that you need to be expert enough to know if the people who are telling you something different know what they're talking about. Because when the consensus is one thing and the dissenters are saying another thing, they're in the minority. So how do you know, you gotta have some way of knowing that what they're saying is the more credible option. And the only way you can really do that is if you have expert level knowledge, and most of us don't. But for me, I just don't buy the conspiracy narrative. I think possibly it's quite dangerous, and I think that we're maybe seeing the result of that here in Northern Ireland. That's why our numbers are going up, because there are a lot of people here are increasingly buying that story, or at least or even if they're not fully buying it, it's creating doubt, and it's maybe making us think that this isn't as serious as it might be, and we're kind of letting our guard down, and that's causing numbers to go back up. So yeah, I could argue that my race was in fact cancelled because too many people listened to the conspiracy theory, didn't follow the restrictions. As a result, infections went up, more restrictions came in, and now the race is cancelled. So yeah, I could blame the conspiracy. And if anything, what's more likely to me is that the conspiracy is a conspiracy. I mean, what better way to destabilize Western countries that are full of stubborn people used to sort of individualistic freedom than to create the idea that the thing that is taking away their individualistic freedom is in fact a conspiracy. Yeah, think about that. That's what I would be doing. If I was some foreign power that didn't like the UK, didn't like the US, I would be sitting creating fake accounts and starting a conspiracy that would just start to roll and self-feed and develop. That's what I would do. Not going to point any fingers, but you know who you are. Yeah, so that's my feeling on running. Yeah. There's so much more could be said on this, like the consequences of going down one route versus the other and all that. But yeah, look, when you get to the point that you decide you can't trust thousands of people who've dedicated their lives to our health, you can't trust anybody when you get to that point. So why can you trust someone online who, because they say they're a doctor, because they have a PhD or something, how can you trust that person when you can't trust your friend who's a doctor? Once you go down this route, the conclusion is just you will never know what's true again, and that's terrifying. So yeah, my advice would be, if you're really convinced there's something else going on, look into arguments against what you think, as well as just the arguments of what you do think. That's something I've done personally. You know, with anything I've ever believed, I will always go out and try and find what are the biggest, best arguments against it, and see if it still stands up. So if you're going down the conspiracy route, make sure you're reading the information which is refuting what you believe, and then evaluate it. But I'm not a fan of the conspiracy. So that's my video about why my race was cancelled and my very serious thoughts on the coronavirus pandemic. My videos are usually much funner than this. I just came in this morning, it's like 9 AM. I had all this stuff on my head and I just thought I would spew and see what come out. And I won't have edited this video very much, so don't judge me on this video. Go watch my other content. And please, I don't know what to do with the comments. I don't want a massive raging debate down there. On the other hand, a massive raging debate would give me a lot of interaction boosts. So, yep. Okay, you can discuss this in the comments. If I see any name calling, accusations of calling people idiots, anything like that, I will just delete your comment. I'm not necessarily going to ban you from the channel, but I will just do not have any tolerance for personal disrespect when it comes to arguing about views. Disrespect the view, poke holes in it by all means, but the point at which you start attacking an individual and calling them an idiot is the point at which you don't really have a good argument. So keep it civil, or Uncle Stephen will come and get you. Yeah, so in summary, there's a virus, we don't quite understand it, and all the chaos and mess is basically trying to figure out what's the best approach. Mistakes are going to be made, there's always going to be politics involved, but it's nothing more nefarious than that, or global conspiracy requiring the silence of literally millions of people worldwide and the compliance, lies and deception of some of my friends and family and your own friends and family. Those are the options. Or, you know, there's a little bit of a spectrum in between as well.